Without a shadow of a doubt, one of the strongest character traits of Susie Carmichael from Rugrats is the fact that she's so secure in who she is as a person. Even since the early days of the show, she's never been one to doubt who she is. Sure, she makes mistakes like anybody does, and feels emotions the same as other characters, for the most part, but while characters like Chucky are prone to multiple different identity crises over the course of their life, that was just never really something that Susie had faced. And of course, as a character who's often looked up to for her wisdom, wearing the mask of bravery when even Tommy, the strongest of the babies, is breaking down, this would be a very fitting character trait. With that being said, it would make it so much more catastrophically jarring when 14 years of established identity would be flushed down the drain by the season 5 episode of All Grown Up, Susie Goes Bad Light. This episode would be the one that would take Susie's reputation and pretty much drag it through the mud, calling into question everything that had already been established as far as her character goes. I mean, it's one thing for a show like Hey Arnold to take a character like Eugene and make him go bad for an episode in season 2. Like, there was only one season of lore to fall back on, and it was a genuinely creative way to explore his character, which was still developing at the time. When it comes to Susie though, after having been in Rugrats for 8 entire seasons and 5 seasons of All Grown Up, the writers of the show trying to make her turn bad for an episode essentially just felt like A, destruction of her character, B, a desperate grasp at a plot point when the well was running pretty dry, and C, the repeating of a lesson that they've told many times before. Don't get me wrong, that's not to say that this is by default a bad episode, and honestly I think the moral at the end of the day is a valuable one to learn from. But you gotta admit, it's a moral that we've already learned from nearly every other character in this show. We've seen almost every other character in her age range struggle with trying to be something that they're not at some point. Meanwhile, as it pertains to Susie, we've never really seen anything but confidence, firm morals and decision-making, and even affirmations as to who she is as a person, highlighting just why she tends to act the way that she does, and has the mindset that she has. On top of it already being established that she comes from a successful family where her father is hailed as a creative genius and her mother is a full-blown doctor, and on top of her siblings also being successful in their endeavors, we even learned in the Kwanzaa special that her family played a massive role in the civil rights movement, and specifically assisting Martin Luther King Jr. on the day that he gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. Taking an established, strong character like that and throwing them into some subpar plot where they completely change who they are, especially when we take into account the reasons why she chooses to do that in this episode, it really just makes it feel like it was one of those where before the end of this show, which they knew was coming, they decided to take one character that they hadn't put into that same scenario that's been overdone so many times, and force her into it no matter how awkwardly it played out, just to check that box and say that they did it. With that being said though, maybe I'm the one in the wrong here. Maybe, on the contrary, this valuable moral lands even harder because it's so against the grain for Susie's character. That's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're gonna analyze this infamous episode of All Grown Up to see if it portrayed a genuine sentiment or if it was just a cop-out episode that ruined Susie's character while the show was already kind of on its way out the door. Really quick though, I am curious, what do you guys think about the whole good character goes bad trope? Is it one that serves to grow characters and our understanding of them, or do you see it like an easy story to lazily throw any character into? I'd especially love to hear your reasoning as it pertains to Susie. Please sound off in the comments, my friends. Your feedback is just as crucial to the conversation here as this video itself. Other than that though, thank you so much for your time. I hope that you're having an awesome day, and without further ado, let's get right into it.
I thought I'd die of boredom.
As this episode starts out, we see Savannah, the self-proclaimed most popular girl in school, walking into the bathroom with her friends, talking trash about how awful their math teacher, Mr. Marsh, is. Lingering behind them, following but being ignored, is none other than Angelica, who just wants so badly to be included. She keeps trying and failing to insert herself into the conversation. And the thing is, I know this video is meant to be about Susie and her story arc here, so I don't want to dwell on this for too long. But really quick, I just have to say, it's kind of frustrating how much of a pick-me that they made Angelica in this series. Like, in the original run of Rugrats, she was always the big powerhouse in charge and was always dominating every situation that she came across. Meanwhile, in this show, that character trait went out the window for the most part. She's still got the attitude, but contrary to the original Rugrats, she lacks really, any control over nearly any situation, and oftentimes is shown to be full of hot air and really desperate to be liked. On one hand, it makes sense, and it's a beautiful testament to how people can change and how once you step out of your immediate circle for the first time, the reality of actual social life can hit you like a ton of bricks and oftentimes humble even the most big-headed. But, from a TV standpoint, her pick-me energy is just kind of icky. She's so desperate for attention from these girls who, A, don't care about her and never will, and B, don't even really seem that popular. It makes no sense to me that Angelica puts them on this pedestal when, in all reality, we don't ever really see these girls socializing with anyone other than their immediate circle, which is obviously the exact opposite of popular. There's so much more we could say about Savannah and her friends, and we'll get to that, but as far as Angelica goes, being as this isn't an Angelica video, I just need to rip the band-aid off and say that her desperation is absolutely obnoxious, and it just gets so much worse. From there though, Susie walks into the bathroom actively wrapping up a conversation with the math teacher that they're talking bad about.
Hey girls! You stopped to talk to Mr. Marsh? Of course not. He stopped and talked to me.
He knew your name?
Of course he knows her name. It's Miss Perfect.
Perfect? I don't think so.
Savannah starts going off about how Susie has perfect grades, perfect attendance, and perfect teeth, spouting some nonsense about how the more they get into their teen years, the more Susie runs the risk of being seen as a goody-goody. This, of course, gets into Susie's head, as being seen as a goody-goody is apparently one of the worst things that you could ever be seen as in this school. Meanwhile, the girls walk out of the bathroom and talking about how Susie just tends to hover on the brink of boring, whatever that means.
Boring? Did you just hear that?
Yeah, and keep away. I don't want any of that goody-goody stuff rubbing off on me.
I am not a goody-goody. Okay, just last week, and then there was... I almost tipped a cow once, remember?
Almost doesn't cut it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I want to make an anonymous statement about Marsh the Harsh.
At that, Susie snatches the lipstick from Angelica, saying that she's gonna do it instead. As she proceeds to draw on the bathroom walls, we cut on over to Tommy, Phil, and Chucky talking about their new elective classes for this semester. Tommy fittingly chose photography, Chucky chose journalism, and Phil, well, he didn't choose a class, so by default he was put into cooking class as a fallback. He struggles with the idea of it, thinking that he's gonna get bullied and beaten up. However, when it comes time for cooking class, everyone, including the teacher, is amazed to see that Phil's a natural, able to whip up some impressive culinary creations seemingly just out of gut instinct. As the teacher and all of the students stand by blown away by his impressive work, we cut back over to Susie and Angelica in Mr. Marsh's math class.
Ahem. A little announcement. I have just been informed that some young lady has taken to rendering some art in the girls' room. And not that I'm pointing any fingers, but Angelica Pickles is to report to my office immediately.
Me?
Oh, your pickles? Here.
But sir, I'm the one who graffitied the girls' room.
Assuming that Susie is just trying to take the fall for her friend, Mr. Marsh doesn't allow her to take credit for the bathroom art. Instead, he sends Angelica onto the office, leaving Susie frustrated that she can't take accountability for her own attempt at breaking the rules. Later on at lunch, Angelica and Susie are in the lunch line as Angelica complains that the hall monitor narked on her, telling the principal that she saw her leaving the bathroom right before the graffiti showed up. As a result, Angelica now has to clean the graffiti off of the whole bathroom, and she's mad at Susie, feeling like she has this force field of perfection around her, not allowing her to take the blame for anything.
Angelica, love the misdeed.
You've gained some serious street cred, girl.
Is it true you have to scrub all the graffiti off the bathroom?
Bathroom? Try the whole school.
Oh.
Sit with us?
Hey, it was my misdeed, therefore my street cred.
Oh, Susie, you really are too good to be true. Now you just give it up, girl. I wouldn't have done the crime if I couldn't do the time.
Susie ends up being really pissed off, saying that she's gonna confess to Vice Principal Pangborn and that it'll be her cleaning up their graffiti instead. Just like that, though, we see her in his office getting laughed at. The man full-blown starts choking on his lunch from laughing so hard, and Susie ends up having to give him the Heimlich maneuver, which just kind of makes her point seem even more unbelievable.
You saved my life.
Didn't mean to, just sorta happened.
But you sure had me going there. The day Susie Carmichael goes bad is the day chickens fly. Now get back to your class before you mess up your perfect attendance record.
Susie takes a good long look at her all-around perfect student plaque, vowing that she's gonna change how everybody perceives her. She ends up planning a few different pranks, the first of which begins at the library. She plans to flip every single book on the shelf so that they're all facing the wrong way. As the school day ends, she asks the librarian if she can stay for an extra hour, and because of her reputation as a good kid, the librarian gives her the keys to the library, telling her to just make sure that she locks up when she's done.
Listen to me, like I need to tell Susie Carmichael that.
Hey, what's an M doing with all the A's? An S? Were you people raised in a barn?
The hours keep on passing, and eventually Susie realizes that she's lost sight of her original goal, having gotten distracted by reorganizing the entire library. Later on, as she walks through the halls by herself, she gets the idea to rub petroleum jelly on everyone's locker handles so that they can't open them tomorrow, but when she sees her reflection in the shine of the handles, she ends up just kind of rubbing them all sparkly clean. With all the handles clean and Susie yet again frustrated by her inability to stick to her prank, she ends up getting the idea to cover the doors to the classrooms in wrapping paper, so that when all the teachers attempt to leave work for the evening, they all end up having to push through the paper. When she catches sight of the ugly, messed up corkboard nearby, though, she gets distracted and yet again just fixes the problem, making things look better than they did before.
Hey, Jiminy, that sure looks festive.
Thanks!
The next day at lunch, we see Phil telling Tommy and Chucky all about his experience in cooking class and how the teacher says that he's this culinary genius. At that, in his disgust at their lunch offerings at school today, Tommy suggests that Phil begin his career by doing an overhaul of their cafeteria lunch menu. Next thing you know, Phil is in the kitchen just helping himself and slinging out different dishes, showing the lunch lady how it's done. As that happens, we cut to Susie walking into the cafeteria as she tells Lil and Kimmy about how frustrated she is that she just can't seem to break the rules.
It's like I'm genetically incapable of being bad.
So, you like you the way you are.
What? On the edge of boring? I am so goody-goody, I even ran out of ideas for bad things to do.
Kimmy looks around, suggesting that Susie start a food fight as she picks up a sandwich that Phil made and passes it to her. Susie tries multiple times to throw the sandwich, however her hand just can't seem to let go of it. She physically cannot get her fingers to unleash the sandwich onto her peers. With that being said, she sets the sandwich back down on the tray with absolutely zero regard or thought whatsoever to the fact that someone else is gonna pick up and eat that sandwich after she got her hands all over it. And she admits defeat, saying that Angelica was right about her.
I'll always be reliable, always get good grades, always floss, and always do the right thing. I'll probably end up president of the United States. My life stinks!
Later on at Susie's house, she ends up sitting at the kitchen table just looking so miserable while her dad checks in with her, making sure that she's done all of her homework and everything that she needs to do, seemingly unaware that she's very clearly down in the dumps. He does end up noticing though when she gives him a rather elevated response to his questions.
Did you just mouth off to me?
No, I did. Yeah. Yes! Yes, I did! I did mouth off! There's hope for me! Yeah! Woohoo! That's right! I'm bad!
So back off in subplot land, we cut to the Java Lava where we see Chucky just miserable, having been condescendingly told how to do his job for a few hours now by Phil, who's letting this whole chef thing go to his head. Luckily for him though, with Tommy having recently shown up, Phil takes the opportunity to set his sights on him while he goes on and on about why Dee Dee's special fajitas aren't special whatsoever. Meanwhile,
And then Pangborn told me if I ever did graffiti again, he'd suspend you. Did I tell you about how his neck hair stood on end when he yelled at me?
Each and every follicle. Face it, Angelica. Your bad isn't good anymore.
Susie, is that you?
What's up, fool?
in class, everybody is just enamored with Susie's new look, questioning whether or not she's actually as bad as she looks. However, when it's revealed that she pranked the teacher with some chalk in his eraser, Angelica by loosening the lid to the salt at lunch, and most of the girls in school by putting grease on the toilet seats, it's not long before Susie's getting props from the popular girls at school, and they're all dragging Angelica, saying that Susie is getting better at this than she is. Of course, no one is surprised though when Angelica talks about how what Susie's doing is basically child's play.
Well, here's one that isn't. You know that old pair of sneakers hanging on the top of the abandoned telephone company building?
You mean the ones that those two football players from Valley High stole from a freshman and stuck up there a long time ago? Only when the guys were coming down they fell off and one of them broke his leg and blew the big game and the other one can't say thermometer anymore?
Uh-huh.
Never heard of them.
The popular girls talk about how no one's ever tried to get the shoes because they're way too chicken, and that one of them would make bad history if they were to climb up and get them, and surprise, surprise, they take the bait, going head to head to see who can get the shoes first. While they head over there, we cut to the culinary arts classroom where Phil is in the middle of preparing a dish when Chucky and Tommy interrupt him, pretty much hosting a mock intervention, trying to get him to see that he has a problem and needs to change. In a less brazen manner, they basically tell him that he's been a condescending jerk about literally everyone's cooking except for his own. He even made Tommy's mom cry a couple days ago simply because she used frozen peas in her meal. Sadly though, Phil basically pushes the blame back onto them, saying that they're the problem and that he was going to invite them to a cooking demonstration that he was invited to put on for the school board, but now he thinks they can stuff it. As he storms off, we cut to later that night where Angelica and Susie are outside of the phone company building, scoping out the shoes dangling from the wire high above. They both come to the conclusion that this is an abysmally stupid idea, and that it crosses the line from bad to just full-blown idiotic territory. Mutually, it's decided that they're just gonna go home and forget about all this, or so it seems, as Angelica walks off actually heading home, but Susie decides to linger behind and sneak through by herself. It isn't too long after that, though, that we see Angelica at home in her robe in the middle of a spa night when Kimmy and Lil come running through her door in a panic.
Susie's climbing the phone company building! What? She said she was going home.
We went by to see how scary the place was, and she had already snuck in. We tried to talk her out of it, but we couldn't.
Give me a minute.
You've seen that place. We don't have a minute.
Okay.
They make their way to the old phone building where we see Susie on her way up the fire escape. Angelica makes her way through the fence and starts heading up as she yells to Susie, telling her that she needs to stop, reminding her that she said it herself. This is a really stupid idea. Unfortunately, though, Susie decides that she didn't come this far to give up now. She continues her pursuit of the shoes as Angelica keeps climbing and pleading with her.
Listen to me. If you get those sneakers down, you won't be proving you're bad. You'll just be doing one more thing absolutely perfectly. Now, do you really want that hanging over your head? You do have a good point. I do? I do! Now let's go home.
Just then, Susie slips on her way over the railing, and as Angelica saves her, the bolts securing the fire escape rip out of the building, sending it plunging down below, leaving the two girls dangling from the power line by nothing but the pair of shoes. Kimmy and Lil decide to sprint ahead to look for some help, telling the girls to hold on, and of course, right at the most dramatic moment, we cut to Phil giving his pretentious cooking demonstration in front of the school board. Tommy takes pictures, Chucky writes an article, and everybody's impressed. That is until Phil sticks his hands down the back of his pants and scratches his butt with the same unwashed hands that he's cooking with, leaving everyone completely repulsed. Back over in the dramatic world of Susie and Angelica, though, we see the two of them still holding on for dear life and waiting for help to get there. Angelica begins to genuinely question why Susie got them into this mess and why she cares so much about what the other girls think, admitting that that's her pathetic deal. When Susie explains that it was really about proving all of this to herself, though, Angelica doubts that logic.
You're the one who never caves to peer pressure. We need girls like you around to make the rest of us look bad.
But people don't realize the kind of sweat that goes into being perfect. I don't glide through anything. I have to work at it.
You do?
Of course I do!
At that exact moment, the laces of the shoes give out and the two girls end up plummeting below, thankfully landing on a large inflatable airbag sat out by first responders. Next thing you know, we see the two of them sitting in chairs at the police station being torn a new one by Susie's father.
You're right. It was dangerous and stupid. But don't blame Angelica. She just came up to talk some sense into me.
I don't believe it. This was your idea? Do you realize what this will do to your permanent record?
Susie, please! You don't have to cover for me. I was the one who started this.
Now that I believe.
As their parents sign off on their kids at the desk, Susie thanks Angelica for helping cover for her and for talking some sense into her, wondering why she would take such a harsh punishment on her behalf. Angelica explains to Susie, though, that she already proved to herself that she isn't perfect and that there's no reason for her to mess up everything that she's worked so hard up to this point for. And at that, the two girls share a hug and we cut back over to Tommy developing a picture of Phil scratching his butt while cooking.
I still can't believe they kicked you out of cooking class. Who knew there were things called health regulations?
But you're so good at it.
Ah, that's okay, fellas. I'll find something else. You know my motto. Never pursue a profession where you gotta wash your hands. Swiss cheese tort?
Thanks. Wait, check.
Now, this episode is one that I'm really excited to dig into and analyze because there's genuinely a ton of easily overlooked aspects here that make you absolutely rethink everything that you thought you knew about this episode. But at the same time, it's genuinely baffling how this one essentially served to turn Susie's character completely upside down. to be fair, there might just be a good reason for that, but before we get into it, there's a few other things that we need to touch base on for context. First things first, it's so aggravating how in the beginning, Savannah and her rude friends were talking bad about Suzie, and they talked about how she just glides through life so easily, acting as if Suzie doesn't work hard for all the achievements that she's been recognized for. They act like she just wakes up in the morning and has awards handed to her just for existing. Of course, we're gonna pick that aspect apart more, but as far as these kids go, their demeanor is just so dismissive and their logic is so backwards that it's painful. For example, they mock Suzie for having good oral hygiene. Like, what does that say about them? The girl who apparently doesn't brush her teeth and probably has foul breath thinks it's funny to mock the girl who takes her personal hygiene seriously. Truly, it's just so ironic because like all it takes is minimal effort to brush your teeth and they act like it's this big, huge thing. It takes a few minutes in front of the mirror a couple times a day. And just because you don't take that few minutes of self-care, it's funny that someone else does? It's also kind of hilarious because on one hand, the middle school kid logic is stupid, and on the other hand, like what, you don't apply yourself and you don't brush your teeth? Cool flex, I guess? Genuinely, at the heart of all this really is just a stupid level of peer pressure. And when I say stupid, I don't mean like stupid high level of peer pressure, I mean like genuinely dumb, idiotic, like absolutely brainless. Even Angelica judges Suzie for not being bad, and at that, Susie's trying to list bad things that she's done so she can be cool like them? Now, I'm not gonna sit here for the next however long and be Mr. Moral Compass talking non-stop about how you should always choose the high road and never walk on the wild or daring side. But like, letting that be the one sole thing that defines whether someone is cool or not is just kind of nonsensical. I'm not the biggest fan of this example, but a lot of us went to school with that one troubled kid who like broke windows and rebelled so much to the point where the school resource officer or whatever would end up having to like take them to juvie. But if I recall correctly on my school days, literally not a single person in school put that person on a pedestal for the simple fact that they acted out and got arrested. By all means, if that person got props, normally it was from like something funny that happened or like putting someone in their place along the way maybe. But nobody became popular overnight, literally just for the fact that they got in trouble. By the logic that these kids in this show run with, like the kid breaking windows and freaking out should have been crowned social monarch of the school because that's the ultimate level of punishment as a kid, right? Going to juvie is like the highest level of getting in trouble. What it boils down to is these girls weren't even hyped on Angelica because she allegedly drew on the bathroom walls. They were hyped on her because the vice principal punished her for it. These girls approached her straight up saying that she was getting street cred for being caught drawing with lipstick on the bathroom walls. But like, I don't know what streets these kids are referring to or where they think they come from, but it's usually getting away with crimes that gets you street cred, right? This logic is just so stupid that it's kind of painful to digest. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if anything, it's way more impressive for someone to spray paint a massive, gorgeous mural and not get caught doing it, rather than like a small, stupid tag that gets you charged with community service just to say that you, quote, did time. The idiotic truth that it boils down to is that for these girls, whether or not you end up in the principal's office is the deciding factor, and that's just such a weird thing to hang the entire basis of someone's social reputation on. Like, this kid logic that you have to get punished for doing something just to be cool is absolutely brain dead, and it's one of those older TV tropes that I'm happy to see used less often nowadays. It's one of those that's becoming a thing of the past, and I'm glad because from a TV standpoint, it's not even really entertaining or very true to life. One of the most frustrating aspects of all this that I feel like doesn't get enough attention though, is the fact that this is all just a big game to Savannah and her stupid friends. In all reality, they're more or less just trying to bait Angelica and Suzie into doing some truly stupid stuff while pitting them against one another in the process. All the while, of course it goes without saying that no matter what Angelica or Susie do, no matter how many rules they break or how much trouble they get in, these girls will never like either of them. I mean, even when Angelica was on their good side, it wasn't long until they were bored with her edgy antics and pretty much seeing her as uncool again, because it had been a few hours since she had last done something bad. When you look at it that way, these girls are not only just using Angelica and Susie for their entertainment, but they're also sitting here and judging people for their quote street cred, deeming someone cool based on how much trouble they've gotten in. But when you really consider it, when you really think about it, what have any of these three girls done that was so bad? What gives these kids the authority to spend this entire episode on their high horse looking down on anyone who hasn't done anything entertaining enough for them, while they themselves are boring and as plain as white bread? If we're truly being honest, as much as Angelica is a wannabe pick-me girl, she's got more depth and character in her pinky finger than any of these girls do in their entire existence. And if I'm really gonna throw mud at anybody in particular though, it's this girl right here. This one just throws so much shade and is such a judgmental Karen, when like literally nobody even knows her name. She's a nobody in the context of this show. She's just this little girl who orbits around Savannah, riding on her coattails, glazing her up, and never really adding any substance to any interaction. This kid really drives me insane, and her voice is absolute nails on a chalkboard. She's the kind of character that purely exists just to be annoying, and if she was tossed out of the show, I don't think any of us would bat an eye. In every single sense of the phrase, this girl is ants at a picnic. Now, moving on to the other characters at play here and how they affected Susie's journey, I feel a little bit mixed on the role that Kimmy and Lil had played throughout this episode. Of course, I think it is very much so worth acknowledging the bright side first. When Susie was caught in the whirlwind of her worth as a person and the value of her social life being called into question, struggling with the fact that she just can't seem to break the rules, they responded by just simply telling her that they like her the way that she is. Now, this response is essentially perfect. It doesn't come with any other implication or call any other aspects of her character into question. It doesn't play into what other people are saying about Susie or judge her current discontent with where she's at socially. It's just a pure, simple affirmation that they like her for who she is as a person. The real Susie, not this confused version of herself that's putting on a weird mask of something that's far removed from her true, genuine self. With that in mind, this episode is a very nice, firm reminder that your true friends in life who genuinely have your best interest at heart aren't gonna require you to change your positive behaviors, and especially not for their entertainment or acceptance. On the other side of the coin for Kimmy and Lil, though, they had me face-palming so hard toward the end. One of their closest friends is out at night risking her life to get a pair of shoes from a power line to impress some dumb kids that'll never accept her. And having seen this, what do? They go get Angelica. Because, you know, she's definitely the most qualified one to handle this and help in this situation. Of course, I gotta play devil's advocate for just a mere second here, because I totally understand not wanting to involve any adults until absolutely necessary as to hopefully avoid anybody getting into trouble. But we're not playing by true logic here. We're playing by Rugrats all grown up logic, so with that in mind, hear me out. Kimmy and Lil could have, rather than going to Angelica's house for help, gone to Susie's house and instead got her parents to help. I mean, all of these kids literally live on the same block, and when they went to Angelica's house, they told her that they were just at the old phone building and saw Susie there climbing. By the time they got Angelica back there, Susie still hadn't made it to the top. That right there tells us that this phone building can't really be all too far away from their neighborhood at all. It's like, what, a 2, maybe 3 minute walk tops? With them running, they likely made it there in a minute or so. Now you're probably thinking, Sean, why would they want to get Susie's parents instead of Angelica? Well, 2 reasons. First of all, you saw how high up this is. Climbing up there in the dark, Susie was in some pretty extreme danger, and instead of sending Angelica up there and putting them both in danger, her parents probably would have been able to get her to come down without having to climb all the way up there themselves, likely before Susie even made it all the way to the top. I mean, let's just be honest, if you were in that position, I'm sure you'd rather see your friend be grounded than have them fall. As far as a second reason to involve Susie's parents though, considering the dumb Savannah logic, Susie getting in trouble here would have automatically made her like the top of the food chain cool. Like, with how dumb these kids are and how much stock they put into other people's punishments, Susie being able to say that she got like grounded for a month for climbing this building at night in an attempt to get these shoes would probably have them way more interested than her actually smoothly coming back with the shoes issue free. It kinda circles back to what Angelica pointed out. Susie just showing up with the shoes would still just kind of affirm how perfect she's able to pull things off. It's one of those where it could have been a win-win for Susie if instead of involving the cops and having to get the legal system into the situation, she could have just been caught and punished by her parents before it got too far. Before she was out dangling from the line by the shoes. Before she even got to the top of the fire escape. Like, in that case, she'd have a story to tell these popular kids and her legal record would still remain scot-free. Considering the entire situation at the old phone building though, is it not absolutely dumbfounding that Angelica of all people actually stuck to her word and Susie was the one that lied and decided to pull something stupid on her own? If I'm being honest, during that scene I was fully convinced that Angelica was going to be the one to stay behind and try to climb up there. That absolutely sounds like something cunning that she would do. This right here is a prime example of what I was saying earlier about how episodes like this completely defy established character expectations. It's so catastrophically out of character to see Susie being the one telling lies and doing reckless things, and to be honest, the only bright side that I can see in that would be if they were trying to portray the sentiment that Angelica's mannerisms are rubbing off on Susie, and vice versa, seeing that Angelica was the responsible one here. That right there truly would be like the one bright side from a storytelling standpoint. I mean, it would make sense. But the thing is, there are way more subtle ways that they could have pulled off a message like that without having to take such a dramatic leap away from the core of all these characters. In a way, it felt like they crammed Susie into this edgy, brazen, irresponsible Angelica-inspired role. Meanwhile, Angelica was forced to be the ultimate voice of reason in an attempt to not only save her friend, but also in the end choose to take the fall for the whole thing, realizing just how much it could affect Susie, which absolutely is the noble, Susie-inspired thing to do. One really interesting thing to take in here also is the similarities and comparisons between Susie's story and Phil's story. All in all, when we look at the big picture, these are two simultaneous stories about being perfect and being a stuck-up arrogant jerk about it, and being perfect while being humble about it and just kind of staying in your lane. The real moral and possibly the ultimate takeaway here is the fact that nobody's perfect. In getting there, however, this episode shows us that the more firmly you plant your feet in the ground, insisting that you're perfect and that your league's better than everyone else, the harder you fall when the inevitable time comes that you slip up and make a big mistake. The more stubborn and prideful you are, the harder it hits your ego. Of course, this was full circle represented in the way that Phil was completely devastated and confused by his mistake. Meanwhile, Susie was able to accept her slip-up more gracefully and move on in stride because she wasn't the one approaching the situation from a high horse. As a matter of fact, in every sense, she was kind of doing the opposite of Phil. Like, he was striving for perfection and being snooty about it, meanwhile, Susie was just hoping to no longer be seen as the perfect good girl who has the entire world falling into her lap without even having to try. I guess with that being said though, that's one of the biggest aspects that really made the ending land so much harder if we're being honest about it. Come time that this episode would reach its end, Angelica would finally recognize that Susie had worked so hard for everything that she's built for herself, and that's something that shouldn't get thrown away just because some other kids don't see or appreciate the work that she does. When we really follow the dominoes, for Susie, this all stems from not being recognized for how hard she tries to do the things that she does, and for Angelica to take the time to acknowledge that after previously having told her that she glides through life, genuinely was a big key gesture that would leave this episode feeling so good in the end. I think that moment may have meant more to Susie than anything else that had happened here throughout this one. This moment might be the most impactful for her because it's her finally getting just a pinch of the validation that she's been really hoping for but denied throughout this entire episode. Prior to that though, there was a big moment in the end that kinda rubbed me the wrong way. At one point, we see Susie's father Randy completely floored that she could have possibly had such a dumb idea, and that for even a moment she would consider jeopardizing her reputation and her future. When it came to the idea of Angelica having come up with the idea though, which as we all know was a lie just to keep Susie's record squeaky clean, Randy harshly makes a comment about how Angelica coming up with this idea is easy for him to believe. Now, if we're all truly being honest with ourselves in recalling this show and Rugrats lore in retrospect, Randy has always been kind of a jerk. Which is ironic, of course, considering that he's one of the famous head writers on one of the most positive children's shows of all time, The Dummy Bears. As much as Angelica was a jerk for assuming that Susie gets to glide through life without trying though, Randy was as big of a jerk for being so rude in his assumption about Angelica. Sure, we can totally admit that the assumption that this was Angelica's idea is rooted in years of history between them and lackluster attitude and decision-making on her part. But in all reality, it's undeniable that despite Randy's perceptions of Angelica and his attitude about the whole thing, it was still his daughter who actually did this at the end of the day. Randy can take the time to bitterly put Angelica down for making that decision all day long, but the only person he's really putting down is his own daughter, considering she was the one who actually made this decision and attempted to follow through. Meanwhile, Angelica was the one who tried to bail. She was the one who had some common sense about the situation. With all of that being said though, we do need to at least recognize that Randy was a massive jerk to Susie as well when he was under the impression that this was all her idea. So, I mean, at least we can say that he's equal in his dishing out of hostility regardless of who it's landing on, whether he's their parent or not. On one final note though, if there's anything else that I'd like to bring up in closing, it would be the fact that it's just so ironic that when it came time for Susie to finally do one single bad thing, it was kind of her dad in a weird way that helped her do it. Like, mouthing off to him and treating him like she did was the first thing that she felt comfortable doing that was even slightly disrespectful, leaning towards bad. This interaction with her father was the one single thing that broke the seal on the bad behavior that Susie is capable of but chooses not to partake in, and it finally made her feel like she could just do whatever she wants. It's intriguing to consider that this of all things was what opened the floodgates, because on that note, her dad being the one to help her find this wave of confidence in stepping outside of her normal box is absolutely fitting. But it's the fact that it's specifically the act of mouthing off to him that causes her to stumble upon that newfound confidence, combined with the overall fact that this is in the name of her trying to not be so much of a good person anymore, that's just diabolically ironic. It's like 4D chess level irony, and it's one of those things that's just so blatant in the story that you don't ever really feel the need to stop and think about it. But when you finally take a moment to, it absolutely changes the way that you think about this episode. With all that being said, I don't want to trash on this one and say that it's a bad episode. I think their intent was clear and that it was a good effort to tell a story with a valiant moral. It's just a little frustrating to me that it feels like it's practically deconstructing Susie as a character, as well as every moral that she's ever stood for. But I have to ask, what do you guys think? How do you feel about the good character goes bad trope? Did it feel like a broken concept to you when applied to Susie? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Really quick, I'd love it if you'd take a moment to look at the handful of names on this screen. These people right here are fighting the good fight. They're standing by me in all things Dust Till Dawn, as well as every other creative endeavor that I've been pouring my soul into recently and cooking up. These are the true 90s kids, and I appreciate them more than words could ever say. If you're a part of the true 90s kids tier on Patreon or here on YouTube through YouTube memberships or any paid tier for that matter, but for the sake of the shout out, especially the true 90s kids tier, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You're all the absolute best and I genuinely appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video though, be sure to drop a like and give a little praise to the algorithm in hopes that it pushes this one to everyone else. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Peace.